They laughed at Juha. They mocked his donkey. They called him foolish. But one day, Juha taught an entire village what real wisdom meant.
Strange, but real. New stories every night. Subscribe and follow me.
In a small desert village surrounded by olive trees and dusty roads lived a man named Juha. He owned no land, no shop, no gold, only a thin donkey and a reputation for being the village fool. Children laughed when he passed, merchants joked about him, even elders shook their heads and said, "Juha means well, but he thinks too much with his heart and too little with his mind." Juha never argued. He smiled, he bowed, and he kept walking. Every morning, Juha visited the bakery at the edge of town. He never bought bread. He just stood near the door, closed his eyes, and breathed deeply. "Ah," he would say, "this bread smells delicious." Then he walked away. The baker grew angry. "You insult me," the baker shouted one day. "You enjoy the smell of my bread without paying." Juha smiled politely. "My friend," he said, "do I take your bread? No. Then I only take the smell, and the smell is free." The villagers laughed harder. "Look at Juha," they said, "too poor to buy bread, too proud to beg." But Juha wasn't poor in spirit, and that day was only the beginning. The winter of hunger. That year winter arrived early. Rain destroyed the crops, cold winds froze the fields, food became scarce. The bakery shelves emptied quickly. Families shared what little they had. Children went to bed hungry. But the baker, the same man who once shouted at Juha, had stored sacks of flour in his basement. He raised his prices. "Supply and demand," he said. "If you want bread, you pay more." People begged. "I have children. I lost my job. I will pay later." The baker refused. "This is business," he said. One evening, Juha stood outside the bakery again. He closed his eyes, inhaled deeply. "Ah," he whispered, "the smell of fresh bread." The baker stormed out. "You again?" he shouted. "You still come to steal the smell of my bread while others starve?" Juha looked at him calmly. "My friend," he said softly, "would you like to take my case to the judge?" The baker blinked. "What?" "If I am guilty," Juha said, "let the judge decide." The baker smiled. "Good, let everyone see how foolish you really are." The trial. The next morning, the village gathered in the small courthouse. Children climbed onto windowsills, men crowded the door, women whispered behind veils. Everyone wanted to see Juha finally exposed. The judge entered. "What is the case?" he asked. The baker stepped forward. "This man," he said, pointing at Juha, "comes every day to my shop and steals the smell of my bread. Now, when people are starving, this is unforgivable." The courtroom erupted in laughter. The judge turned to Juha. "What do you say?" Juha bowed respectfully. "Your Honor," he said, "I admit it. I enjoy the smell of bread. But I do not touch it. I do not take it. I only smell it." The judge rubbed his beard. "And the baker wants payment for the smell?" "Yes," Juha said. The judge sighed. "This is a strange case." Then Juha reached into his pocket. He pulled out a small leather pouch. Inside were a few copper coins. He shook the pouch gently. The coins clinked. The sound echoed through the room. Juha smiled. "Your Honor," he said, "let the baker take the sound of my money as payment for the smell of his bread." Silence. Then laughter exploded. The judge slammed his hand on the table. "Order! Order!" But he was smiling. He turned to the baker. "You heard the coins. You smelled your bread. Justice is done." The baker's face burned with shame. The villagers clapped. Juha bowed again. and walked out. But this story didn't end there. That night, Juha could not sleep. He thought about the children crying, the families starving, the baker locking his doors, and for the first time, Juha did not smile. The next morning, he went to the fields outside the village. He sat beneath an olive tree and waited. At noon, travelers passed. He offered them water. At sunset, farmers returned. He helped carry baskets. At night, he knocked on doors. "Do you have extra grain?" he asked gently. "I don't want it for myself." Some laughed, some ignored him, some gave him a handful, a cup, a sack. By the end of the week, Juha had collected more food than anyone expected. But instead of giving it away immediately, he went to the baker. The baker slammed the door when he saw him. "Go away," he said. "I'm not in the mood for jokes." Juha held up a sack of flour. "This is not for you," he said. "This is from the people." The baker frowned. "What do you want?" "To bake bread," he replied, "for the village." The baker laughed. "You think I will bake for free?" Juha nodded. "Yes." The baker crossed his arms. "Why would I?" Juha leaned closer. "Because if you don't," he whispered, "tomorrow no one will buy from you, not because they hate you, but because they will remember who helped them when they were hungry." Silence. The baker looked away. For the first time, he looked afraid. "Bring the flour," he muttered. The night of bread. That night the bakery lights stayed on. Smoke rose from the chimney. The smell of fresh bread filled the air, stronger than ever before. People came out of their homes. Children ran barefoot through the streets. Mothers covered their mouths in disbelief. The baker stood at the door. Juha stood beside him. One by one, Juha handed bread to the people. "No charge," he said, "just eat." Some cried, some hugged him, some whispered prayers. The baker watched silently. Then something unexpected happened. A small boy walked up to the baker and said, "Thank you." The baker froze. The boy held the bread like treasure. "Thank you," he said again. That night, the baker did not sleep. The change. The next morning, something strange happened. The bakery opened early, but this time there was a sign, "Pay what you can." People stared. Some thought it was a joke, but the baker stood behind the counter serious. "No one leaves hungry," he said. The village changed. Neighbors shared more. Strangers smiled more. And Juha returned to standing outside the bakery, breathing deeply. "Ah," he said, "this bread smells wonderful." The baker laughed. "Come inside," he said. "I'll give you a loaf." Juha shook his head. "No," he said, "save it for someone who needs it more." Years later. Years passed. The village grew. The bakery became famous, not for its bread, but for its kindness. Travelers came from far lands to see the place where people once paid for bread with the sound of coins. One day, a young boy asked Juha, "Why do people think you're foolish?" Juha smiled. "Because wisdom doesn't always look serious." "Then what is wisdom?" the young boy asked. Juha pointed at the bakery. "When someone is hungry," he said, "don't teach them a lesson, feed them." The ending that shook hearts. On Juha's last day in the village, he walked slowly through the market. People noticed something was wrong. "Juha, are you okay?" they asked. "I'm tired," he said gently, "but happy." He sat outside the bakery one final time, closed his eyes, breathed deeply. "Ah," he whispered, "this bread smells like love." That night, Juha passed away quietly in his sleep. The next morning, the baker placed a loaf of bread outside his door. No price, no sign, just bread, and a note. "To the man who taught us that the smallest wisdom feeds the largest hearts." They called Juha a fool,
But fools don't change villages. Fools don't feed the hungry. Fools don't turn greed into kindness. Juha did, and sometimes the wisest people are the ones we laugh at.